Welcome back to the Intelligent Builder podcast, sponsored by Plutus Agents. Today, I'm joined by James Kerr, the founder of Boss Security Screens, a fast-growing security company known for custom stainless steel screens that look like regular solar screens but actually stop break-ins. James started out as a mechanical engineer, spent years working overseas, then built and sold an IT firm that focused on keeping evil at bay online before turning that same mindset to physical security for homes, schools, and commercial buildings. So now Boss has installed tens of thousands of screens with a track record of zero successful break-ins through their product. So James, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's start off with kind of your story. So how did you go from mechanical engineering, working in
Yeah.
Japan, then the IT firm in Hawaii, and then now
Yeah.
with Boss Security Screens?
So it's really interesting. I grew up on a farm. Prior to that, my father was in the military and he became missing in action in the Vietnam War. So the government said, look, my mom, your four kids, we'll put them to school on the GI Bill, right? Which was really a godsend for us because we wouldn't have been able to go to college if we didn't have the support of the government for that. So I had the choice of wherever to go in the world, right? They were going to subsidize a certain amount. I chose UC San Diego. I chose mechanical engineering. And after graduating, I headed off to Japan and I landed a job with Sony. We were doing what was called R&D planning and corporate strategy, right? But what it amounted to was building digital cameras. So this dates back to 1988, right? When these cameras were the size of a small suitcase and we sold one for 35 grand, right? They were expensive and only the competitors were buying them. Fast forward after 7 years in Japan, which was an outstanding experience, I decided to head back to the US and I thought if I could get into Stanford B School, that's what I'll do. Stanford said, no way, Jose. They said no. UCLA said yes, but I was intent on Stanford. So I landed in Honolulu just because it wasn't too far away from Tokyo. And I wanted to be close to all the friends and colleagues, that I'd been with for the last 7 years. And then starting that IT company that you talked about, did that for a good 20 years or so, sold it. And there was a non-compete that said basically you can do anything, but you can't do anything IT related in Hawaii, right? The standard non-compete. And so we decided to sell everything, travel around the world for a little bit, which we did, and I highly recommend to anyone. Lived in Europe for a year and a half, and then made home in Vegas. We had a rental there. That tenant was moving out. We moved in, and so we settled in there. And my wife at one point said, "Hey, I don't feel safe when you're away, when you're traveling." And I offered to get her the gun, to shoot someone, and offered to get her the dog to bite someone. And she didn't want either of those scenarios. She didn't want to have to kill anyone, shoot anyone. She didn't want the dog to get hurt. So if you step back and think for a moment, cameras, alarms, these things aren't going to stop a break in. They're just going to tell you when it's happening, right? What is going to stop a break in is a big moat with lots of alligators in there, but I couldn't put a moat around my house with lots of alligators. But what I could do is make a barrier that would keep all that bad stuff out, whether someone's home or not, right? So this layered approach to security is actually a smart way to keep people safe. And for the mesh from the oil industry, it looks like ordinary bug screen. If you touch it, you'll know right away this ain't something usual, right? It's used for filtration. So in the oil industry, they have these pipes full of sludge and debris, and they got to filter all that crap out. And that's that material. So then I took aluminum framing, which aircraft grade aluminum, and this industrial grade mesh, attached it all together, built a egress in case of an emergency, and fixed it to the side of the home. So the windows, the doors, the sliders, even pet doors, everything's custom made down to the eighth of an inch. And so on the home, it actually looks great. So a lot of clients want security, but they don't want the home to look like a fortress. They want to fortify it, but not look like a fortress. And so this, in my mind, is generation three. I mean, you could get those bars, they look like bars and you feel like a caged animal, or you could get the rolling shutters, but those only work when they're down, right? The moment you raise your rolling shutter to get some sunlight in or some fresh air, it's game over. You don't have any security anymore. So this Gen 3 is, hey, it looks like a regular screen, it looks like a regular bug screen, looks like a solar screen. It fits over my windows, my doors, every opening in my home, but it's really hard to breach. And because we're mounting it into the subframe of the home, you can't do the old ATM trick where you back up your truck and chain it up and rip it off. The whole wall would come down if you tried to rip it like that, because it's every 8 inches is screwed into the studs, right? And then the mesh is hard to breach. You'd have to show up with the right tools and have enough time and be willing to make a ruckus to get through it. So it's win-win-win. You get the security you need, right? Keeps all the bad stuff out. You get the visibility out. You're not looking through bars, right? You're not trying to look through a shutter. You can actually see out, and you get the fresh air in. And it's so strong. It's rated Hurricane Category 4. So some of our clients in like Hurricane Alley, tornado areas where they do get severe weather, this is a really nice thing because flying debris at 156 mile an hour, it's going to kill someone inside the home, right? And that's where we are. And it started, first year was 300 grand. Second year was 1 million. And I'm just doing this on my own, right? Third year was 3 million. And then the fourth year, tried to scale this back a little bit because we're selling it faster than we can make it, right? Everyone wants security, right? Especially this kicked off at 2018. COVID was maybe year 2000. You can imagine, everyone wanting security. And the line for ammo during COVID was longer than the line for food. And, no one really knew what was going to go down, right? And even me, law abiding, boring citizen, if I had to go get some food, right? Well, that's what I'm going to have to go do, right? If it came to that. So you have a lot of people just legitimately concerned about the welfare of their loved ones. And so 8 million in the fourth year. And so that's the sweet spot where we're at right now. And for everyone out there that's in this industry, we can go into all the failures that I've made so you don't make those, but also some of the wins. I can tell you that at some point, what you want to do is stop trading your time for money, right? We know I can go get a job somewhere. I'm going to work 8 hours or more, and they're going to pay me per hour plus OT, but I got to show up for work. Right. And we as entrepreneurs, I think, ultimately realize like the best solution really is one that generates income for us without our necessarily having to be there. So the metaphor is the more we can provide the denim for the people who are making and selling the jeans, well, that's a good thing, right? And the more that we could take an invoice and swap it for another invoice, right? Well, that's a good thing. We want to do more by doing less. We don't want to create a business to get even busier. A lot of people, they'll start a company, and if you start tracking the amount of time you're spending on it and the stress that comes with it, you're not making nearly as much as you were if you were back on that other job, right? And so that's no good, right? You got to find a way to do more by doing less. You got to find a way to build an asset that is worth something that you could exit at some point. You got to find a way to generate that income, right? Without you being the guy on the bus, right? So that analogy is, well, if you got someone that's on the bus and dies, that person gets hit by a bus and the business falls apart. Well, that's not really a good business, right? If it's dependent on one individual, right? Or three, right? So I think a lot of this discussion, many of your viewers probably they've heard before, but it's the kind of thing where you got to hear it multiple times, and sometimes you got to bang your own head against it in order to go, yes, now I know what that means, right? So here we are, right? We're to the point of making the denim for the people making the jeans. We're modeling a preferred contractor business similar to what Renewal by Anderson does. They, of course, can make windows, but they can't sell all of them, and they can't install all of them, and they can't service all of them. So they partner with preferred contractors. There's a nominal buy-in for that, but anyone who's serious about doing the business, it's a small number. That gives them factory direct pricing and they're off to the races. So if they've got a tangential market space, I've got one of these preferred contractors who's already selling windows for people like Anderson who want new windows, better windows. So that same base, of course, at some point probably wants security on top of that. Same thing for doors, same thing for people doing home remodeling. So there's that tangential market where they're able to offer a new product or service to the same base. And so they capture more income. The other opportunity for people whom we are partnering with is what we call a licensee. So it's like a franchise, but there's more flexibility in terms of running your own business. And in that case, there's a lot of hand holding. So preferred contractor, they're already up and running. They're already doing their thing. They don't need help from us. The boss licensee is more like, I'm a business person. I'm out of Reno. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I want to run with this. I need help. I don't have marketing collateral. I need, of course, the training on measuring and install. I need the operational support. Like, we got a lead. Now, how do we serve that lead? Right. So, um, that licensing opportunity is that second opportunity. And that, of course, is a higher buy-in. For the preferred contractor, it's $25K. For the licensee, it's 100K. And for the 100K, again, they get basically a business in a box and we get them all trained up and rocking. So for me, I want to do more by doing less, as I mentioned, but there's a first to market advantage for us in this space because once you get security screens, you're not going to replace them with new security screens. You're one and done, right? So it's not uncommon for clients to buy a new home and get more security screens, or it's not uncommon for clients to do phase 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not uncommon, but it's much like solar, where once you get that solar on the roof, you got to move on to the next home, right? And so that's an opportunity for us to hit the nationwide real quick, be first to market by partnering with people who already understand their market space and they already have maybe a client base. That's smarter than us doing it all alone, right? And that's where we are right now. So we're 8 years old. We've made just about every mistake in the book. That's where I feel in this podcast we could kind of dig into that a little bit. But also, if after this podcast anyone has any questions about anything, I feel it's my duty to help where I can. Like the first 10 years of your life, you're just trying to do something, make some story, right? Learn along the way. The second decade of your life, you really have to produce, right? You really have to perform. That's when your title's important, your income is important, right? You're starting to achieve things. And then the third decade is, you know, thanks to that community, thanks to all those people from mentors to clients to colleagues, whatever, who supported me. Now it's my turn to uh, help, my turn to give back, right? And so that that third 30 years is what that's dedicated to. And that's why I feel it's my obligation to help there. Now, if you kick things off and you end up at you start at age 20 and you're done at age 50, then it all starts all over again. Another set of 30 years. Anyway, I'm all yours. What do you got?
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. Those seem like some pretty great opportunities too with those programs you have. And you've had a pretty amazing journey so far and some incredible growth so far. I know you've said a couple times you've made a bunch of mistakes, and I do want to talk about those for sure. Yeah. Firstly, though, you've taken kind of a unique approach because, like you were saying, most people think, cameras, alarms, or dogs as home security, but you took the more physical barrier approach, which is super interesting and unique. And now you've done, over something like 17,000 installs with 0 break-ins through your screens. So looking back, what's maybe an early decision that you made, say about product, market, or your standards in general that really made the business work?
It's all about the client. I mean, we hear this all the time, but our job is to give them the security they need and deserve. And so it's a very customer centric company. And what that means at the end of the day is, my favorite expression is we can't always guarantee success, but we should always strive to be worthy of it. And what that means is sometimes stuff ain't going to go right, but we always need to make it right. And especially when it's inconvenient for us, right? So what we end up doing there is the right thing. And what we end up doing there is developing that integrity that serves us well over the long time. So the start really is the values, but even then before that is the story, right? So everyone needs a superhero secret origin story, right? And mine, the wife wasn't safe. We need that story, right? Not just for potential clients, but also for team members who are joining us. They need to know how this all came about and why it's important. There's a why there, right? We need to know that why. And then we got to be clear about what's important to us, right? What are our values? So everyone deserves a safe and happy home. That's a given, right? We are not going to be the cheapest or the fastest, but we are going to be the best, right? It's easier to defend being the best than it is to defend being the cheapest, right? We're always going to do what's right, even when it's not convenient for us, right? Especially when it's not convenient for us, right? If it ain't right, it ain't right. Honest days work, honest days pay. I mean, I'd rather be a smaller company with a nice, tidy, profit net income than a larger one that's always cutting corners, and trying to rub two nickels together to make a dime. I'd rather pay my people better, even though we're smaller, than try to get bigger and have to pay people less. I'd rather give people the security that I would put on my home or my mom's home than try to trim something here or there and try to get away with it. You see it all the time, right? And maybe that's the cycle of companies is, you've got some start. Usually it's the founder with some idea and some drive and something that's important to them. And then the company starts to mature and then a different set of people come in and then things change. So you see it in Apple. I mean, imagine the cool stuff that used to come out from Apple was really cool. People lined up to get the opportunity to see it first, right? And now not so much, right? Burt's Bees. I don't know if you're familiar with Burt's Bees on the East Coast. Old guy making bees and all kinds of stuff out of bees. There's a good documentary on him. Same story. Ben and Jerry ice cream. Same story, right? So the original inspiration was there, but at some point it got kind of liquidated, right? So I'd rather not liquidate. I know the bigger bucks are there. I'd rather stay bespoke and really be proud of the work that we do. And my team also get paid well for what they do and go home at night and feel good about everything that we've done and look forward to the next day. That's me. But there's also something that says, the thing that makes you successful is the thing that destroys you. And I think what happened with Apple and with Burt's Bees and Ben and Jerry's is, for the business to rock, at some point, the founder had to get out of the way, right? Now, that doesn't mean I relinquish full control. I just need to be careful that the thing that made me successful is not the thing that destroys me. Because the ultimate goal is to build something sustainable. And if I'm marching down the path where there ain't no U-turn, right, that's going to be a problem, right? So I think that very thing, the why, and then the values that are based on top of that, and just really maintaining the eye on the ball in terms of this being a customer-centric company is the thing that served us well. In our industry, it's really easy to spook someone into buying something they don't need because it's security. Like, you better watch out. The home next door is just where someone was killed, right? You can spin that up and force them to buy something they don't really need, but that ain't right. Or you could let them be complacent about something. Oh, I don't need security. This isn't a big issue in my. Well, that's not right either, right? So we really focus on that middle band there, being sensible and proactive. And we're going to make recommendations as if it were our mom's home. And if we can help there, that's great. If we can't help, then we've got to be willing to point people in the direction that could help them. So I think this approach of just working alongside the client rather than across from them. Like when you go to negotiate, when you sit across the table, it's always me versus you or us versus them. But when you sit next to them, it's more like, how are we going to figure this out? All right. Here's what my recommendations are. So that I think is at the core of our DNA, and that's what's really served us well. People want security, right? It's just, and once they realize what the screens are, they want it. It just becomes an issue now of budget, right? So,
Gotcha. Yeah. So staying values driven, always remembering the why, and
sure.
continuing to be very customer
Yeah.
centric in the way that you work. That's kind of gotten where you are today. And
Yeah.
you've seen pretty explosive growth over the years, each consecutively of the last 8 years. So now I do want to talk about some of the mistakes you've made, because you said you've made a lot of mistakes over the
Yeah.
course of the few years, which of course you have. But
Right.
what were maybe one or two of those mistakes that you're comfortable talking about that
Yeah.
really
Um,
created a permanent
yeah.
change in how you do things?
Yeah, you need there are three legs to the success stool, right? Chair. You know, there are three pillars to a successful company. And if you're missing one of them, your company won't go to the next level. So the first one is you need someone who's going to sell it, right? Someone who's good at selling it. You need someone who's going to do that, or someone's, right? Number two is you need someone who's going to make it, right? These are when you first start, you're one person with all three hats, but eventually you need to build out these roles with people who are professionals in those roles. Not like my Aunt Nancy, who's going to work for half the cost. She's not going to do well, she might do an awesome job. I don't know. But in general, it isn't until you satisfy these three pillars with professionals that you really get the growth that you're looking for. So again, the first one to sell it, second one to make it, and third one to be sure all the trains run on time, right? So this is the operational one. The last one's an operational one. The second one's kind of in our world, engineering one, and the first one's obvious sales and marketing, right? So I could sell it, and we kind of sort of had the ability to make it, but not a strong one. And we definitely didn't have anyone make trains run on time. So it's imperative to get all three of those lined up. It's the only way you're going to have happy clients, happy employees, and a happy CPA, right? You got to get those three pillars lined up. I'd say the second big mistake. So the first mistake, and it's typical, is you're rocking, you're moving along, but you're not satisfying those rules with professionals. It's better to pay someone who can do an outstanding job than to try to get by with someone that do a mediocre job. It'll be too expensive with the mediocre work. The other side, just two of the problems, right? The other thing that was guilty of is as things were booming, we're at 3 million. I told my wife, let's just sell the thing. Let's exit, take the money off the table, give it to someone else. I don't want the headaches. And she was really eager to grow it into a $10 million company. She's got her own business success. You should have her on your podcast as well. She wanted to run with it. I didn't want any part of it. I like starting things, but I'm not the person to run it, obviously, right? So I just wanted to fly my airplane. I'm a enjoy flying, general aviation pilot. That's all I wanted to do. So I was retired on the job, right? Retired on the job. And just like, you don't have kids, but if you have kids, you're the best person to raise them, right? You got to keep an eye on them. You can delegate things, you can hire a babysitter or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to be the best person to take care of it because they're your kids and you know them well, right? So I don't know if that's a good metaphor, but what I'm saying is you can't just walk away from something and expect it's going to work, right? Especially when it's in that startup. We're still a startup, right? Especially when it's in that startup phase, right? Because it requires attention. And, I like to say you must always inspect what you expect, right? And that means you got to get eyes on things. It means you got to spend time with clients. You got to spend time with your team. You got to sit down, look at the numbers, right? On a regular and ongoing basis. You can't just check out. So I made the mistake of checking out, and I learned my lesson. That was very painful.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that is a tough lesson to learn, but it's definitely valuable in that it can teach you the real way and how to make things happen. And you've kind of mentioned it a couple times. There's that dream that all owners have, where they just want a business that runs on autopilot, right? Kind of like a franchise or something like that. So you also have this goal of building it into an asset where you can sell, where you almost just sold at 3 million,
Right.
but you want something with an exit, not a job. So what are you doing right now that you think makes Boss more sellable and less dependent on James being there every day doing the work, building?
Yeah. So in the end, we strengthen that role of the integrator. That's the one who is making all the trains run on time, and the other two pillars too. So we're building capacity to meet the sales volume. We're strengthening the operational side with more standard operating procedures, lots of KPIs, key performance indicators. So to the point of inspecting, one is visually, inspecting this factory floor, but the other is visually digging into the data on turnaround times and quality, yield rates. So we're a very data intensive company, and we're able to track numbers that'll show us problems that ordinarily might be hiding somewhere that's not so obvious. So between hiring professional salespeople now, in the past, we would take someone off the street, train them up on the product, throw them out in the field, and they'll close 1 out of 3. Yeah. I think you could get like the most delinquent person with a criminal record and they'll close 1 out of 10, right? But you take someone with a good heart, no experience, and maybe no aptitude for sales, they'll close 1 out of 3. And then you train them up and you hope that they'll do better, maybe 1 out of 2, 50% close rate. But if you hire a professional, someone who's been there, done that, right? Someone who already gets it, they're just looking for a higher margin product with a high ticket price and a high barrier to entry, which is what security screens are, right? Average deal size 10, 12K. No one's going to be able to start up a business tomorrow and start selling tomorrow. So there's a high barrier to entry. It's high margin, of course, because it's all bespoke, right? But hiring a professional in that sales role, now we get close rates 3 out of 4. So now we're getting 3 out of 4. We're adding more manufacturing capacity across the country, and we are dialing in these numbers more. There's like a discipline to the operational side of things. Whatever's your biggest expense per month, you've got to take a moment and look at that thing. I mean, you do it when you go out to eat somewhere. So let's say you're buying dinner for your family and they send you the bill and you look at the bill, right? You really just, it's not that you're thinking that they're trying to cheat you or something. You just want to know, where did the money go, right? I spent this XYZ on something. So, same thing when you look at your business. If you've got a payroll, our payroll is easily 100 grand a month. Our ad spend is maybe 60 to 80 grand a month. These are big dollar numbers, right? So you got to sit down, you got to look. This is part of this inspecting what you expect thing. We just did a payroll meeting this morning, and it's easy for me to say, no, I'm just going to hand that off to someone. And you want to be able to do that as much as possible because you can't do it all the time. But occasionally you got to jump in and see. And it's clearly obvious that some days that were taken off were missed. In the scheme of things, it's maybe $1,000 or so, but it's $1,000, right? And so if we 10x in size, that one thing that we discovered, that one procedure that we have wasn't working. If we can fix that thing now, when we're 10x the size, we would have saved 10 grand just by coming up with a new procedure, right? So a better procedure. What are we doing in order to build the foundation for at least improve efficiencies, right? I think any business is a set of dials here and there or whatever, right? So it costs us about $200 to make the phone ring. And then we have to convert that request for an estimate into a in-person estimate or a Zoom call. And we're able to close 50% of those, right? And so now we're at $400. And then If we go in to get the signature on the contract, we're able to close the deal, and only half of those, well, that 200 became 400, the 400 became 800. Well, now we spent $800 for the signature on the contract, but you can see every step of the way from the lead conversion rate to the booking rate to the sales rate. There are all these little dials every step of the way, even like measure success rate. Sometimes measure might be inaccurate. And then there's manufacturing rate. So every step of the way, there are these little dials that need to be adjusted constantly. Um, that's what we're doing, right? Hiring the professionals, not just for sales, but every pocket of the business who could do it well, building out capacity, right? So we can support the volume, and then really, keeping a good grip on what's actually happening. I mean, we all have butt GPS. We all have an idea of like cash flow seems like it's kind of slow, right? So then you can dig into the numbers and really find where those choke points are, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's some great advice too, just for business owners, just in general. Visibility is super key and vital to the business to make sure that you know it's healthy at all times. But let's zoom out a little bit and look, so let's say over the next 12 months, so 2026 really. What has to happen for you to look back and say, yeah, this was a winning year for the business? But then also at the same time, looking even further out, 2026 and beyond, what's a concrete goal or picture that you're working towards?
Yeah, next year we want to bring on board at least one preferred contractor per quarter and at least one licensee per quarter, and that'll keep us busy. So if we can achieve those two things and keep our turnaround times out of the factories at about the 6 to 8 week mark, we're good. So if we sell a bunch of stuff and we have limited production capacity, the turnaround time gets longer and longer, and that's bad for business. Everyone wants everything now, especially if they had a break in last weekend, right? Also, the more you can speed turnaround time, the more your cash flow improves. So in our business model, we accept a deposit, which is typically 50% of the job. And then we may do a partial install, but usually when the deal is when everything is installed, done, that's when we get the second half of the deal size as a payment. So meanwhile, if you have delays because of production capacity or measurement errors or damage in shipping or whatever, you still have that overhead that you need to pay every month. But the turnaround time is key because that accelerates your cash flow and client happiness levels. So with client happiness levels, then you get the 5-star reviews and you get the referrals and you get additional orders, for additional openings. So, McDonald's measures the turnaround time to drive-throughs like 90 seconds or 60 seconds or less. There's a clock there running, and that's one of the metrics that they very carefully monitor. And we do that as well, because we know how expensive it is when turnaround time begins to creep longer and longer. So, what I want to see in 2026 is 4 new preferred contractors and 4 new licensees. So, the licensees would be in some territory, like Chicago, for example, where there's a need for this, and there's someone there as an entrepreneur who can do one of those three, either selling, making, or operations, right? Usually it's someone on the selling side or the operational side to get started. And then we supplement those other areas where they're more deficient. Right. So if we have someone, let's say they have really strong carpentry skills, they want to become a boss licensee. Well, that person probably won't sell as well as a pro, and that person probably won't do the day-to-day operational management as well as a pro. So as a licensee, it'd be our responsibility to help them find the talent to support that, right? So 4 of the preferred contractors, 4 of the licensees increase capacity with more regional support. So if I'm selling in, it's always good to have a factory near the market, right? Then there's less time in shipping. Remember, I mentioned time. There's also less cost in shipping. So if we can hit those 2 targets, I'm golden. So moving in the future, it's more of the same thing. It's measured growth. It is possible to fly too high too soon. So we don't want to do that. We'll take additional investment and just continue to grow. I would say my time horizon, I'm 60 now, so I'm good 3 to 5 years from now to hand this over to someone. My son is 13, and so he'll be 18. Is probably too young to run a company of that size. And he's got to, I'm a firm believer to start in the beginning. So even if he were working, he's got to start, sweeping the floors and breaking down crates. He's got to, because that's the only way you're going to be able to know this is if you really live every stage of it from the beginning, right? So there may be some opportunity to transition like that. My wife is younger than I am, and she's 12 years younger, so maybe she's got more endurance than I. But I would say exit in 3 to 5 years would be good for me, and maybe they just take care of it after that. I just got to be
Yeah,
very careful
that's
I don't make the same mistake twice.
yeah, very true. That would not be good. 18 might be a little bit too young to take over a
Uh,
company like that, but you
I,
never
I
know.
yeah, I'll tell you one story. So I had the IT firm in Hawaii, and we started out doing a lot of break fix support. This was back the year 2000. Wait, yeah, the year 2000. And at that time, it was all about break fix stuff came out of a box. It was hard to connect it all. No one knew it was like multimedia. No one knew. They were very difficult to just pull out of a box and use. This was year 2000, right? So then over time, the whole computing market evolved. And instead of setting up Exchange server, mail server in someone's office closet, uh, you could now host your email through, say, Google or Microsoft. And so the whole market changed from, hey, maybe I'll do a localized network to, hey, how do I use the browser to run my business? Not just day to day stuff, but also find new clients and keep them, right? How would I run payroll through a browser, which we all take as a given now? I ended up selling to someone, and here's another takeaway for someone who is thinking of selling, someone who raised the money, SBA. He didn't have any real business experience. I walked away. The SBA paid me, but he carried the note, right? The SBA gave him the money to buy the company. I took the money, but he struggled with it. So maybe one takeaway is just because there's someone with the money, if you care about your business and you want to see it succeed, you really got to be careful about whom you deputize as the person to take it over, right? He really struggled with it. He ended up exiting. An employee bought it from him and me because the original buyer still owed money to me. So the employee bought it, paid him, paid me, and actually rocked the business. Just did it better than I. Right. So back to my point of, keeping eyes on things and being careful who is anointed as the next person. It's entirely possible that the founder is only good for what he or she did, which was getting things going, but not good at all at everything else, right? So in this case, this employee is just rocking the business, doing a much better job for that other IT company that I had. And so maybe it's the case for Boss is that first time there was no one really equipped to do it well, but the second time there may be someone who's very well equipped for that, much better
Yeah,
than
that's
I.
a good lesson to learn. That's definitely not a mistake you'll want to make again in 3 to 5 years, but at least you know now. So that's great. And let's kind of based on those two goals you had for 2026, let's say hypothetically you have a magic wand, right? And you can fix or erase something in the business that's slowing you down now, slowing you down to reach those two goals you mentioned. What would that one thing be? What would that one thing you want to fix be?
I want a solution that has half the number of parts and costs me half as much in terms of material cost and labor cost. And the reason is this: right now we satisfy the kind of the cream of the market. They've got the money, they can write the check, they want white glove experience, they want the best, right? So, it's not like yesterday I sold 30K to Colorado Springs and another 30K to another client in New Jersey just by a Zoom call, right? So that type of buyer is it's kind of a more high-end buyer. They're like upper middle class. One's a physician, the other one is a military contractor. He's but a civilian. He's obviously paid well for his expertise. But you can see where they have the money, they want the best, and they can afford it. But in my world, I've been to so many places, so many homes. I've talked to so many people that need the same security, but there's no way in hell they're going to get approved for any kind of loan for 30 grand, to do a home improvement project. And so what that means is, um, like 80% of the country needs this. They need a solution that is more affordable for them. The other 20% is no issue for them. They can, as I mentioned, they've got the money. But the other 20%, and so what that means is a screen for the people, right? Just like the VW was originally introduced as a car for the people, right? It was a simpler car, it's less expensive, it really got the job done. And that's what we need. And if I had that magic wand, it would be a screen for the people to help those people who need the security most, but can afford it least, help them get what they need to keep their families safe. I mean, there are single moms with young kids, right? How do we keep them safe? There are retirees, they don't have any retirement savings. How do we keep them safe? Grandmas, right? How do we keep grandma safe, right? So I want that magic wand to develop that solution so that we can make it more commonplace for everyone.
Yeah, that's a great kind of mission to strive for these next few years while you're still running the company. I think that'd be incredible. I mean, it's definitely obviously very difficult to achieve something like that because of product costs and material costs and all that, especially with the taxes and I forget what it's called. Tariffs that are
Yes.
going on right now. Material costs are pretty rough, but definitely something to strive for. Since we're a bit over, I will ask you one more question.
Sure.
So, let's for a typical builder or contractor listening who wants to offer better security to their clients, what's the first upgrade you think that they should be talking about that most people overlook? Maybe from a general building standpoint.
Sure. Well, I'll address that on two angles. One is we do a lot of B2C, which is to residential, business to consumer, but we also do a lot of B2B, which is commercial clients, schools, and government. So we'll secure a school with the same screens, and those deal sizes are 100K or so. So anyone listening, if you're interacting with clients like that, whether it's another builder or a school district or government offices, there's opportunities there for something like this. I think your question's more like, hey, if someone's in this contracting world, what are some basic things they should consider when they're planning the development of that structure? There's a school of thought called CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So CPTED, CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. And the whole school of thought is, look, there are a ton of things that you can do in addition to strengthening doors and windows or whatever on the environment side of that building to make it more difficult for criminals to breach it, for example, or vandalize it or whatever. And so one is you start seeing fencing now. Fencing used to be solid material and you couldn't see through it. You'd have to like look over it to see what's going on. Now you'll see a lot of modern fencing has that kind of slat structure. It could be vertical slats or horizontal slats so that you get a lot of drive-by direct line of sight. People can see what's going on, right? At your home or your office or your school or whatever. They're physical barriers in addition to fencing. It could be anything from shrubbery to, rock structures to prevent vehicles from entering a certain area. It's all about reducing the height of those bushes so that no one can crouch behind there. It's about raising the height of the branches and things like that, which would also obscure views of what's actually happening on that property. It's about lighting. It's about thorny bushes, right? All this little stuff kind of adds up to harden that location without making it look hard, right? So that would be something to look at. And what's interesting is local law enforcement offers free assessments for that. So you can call your local and just tell them you want a CPTED assessment, and they'll come do it for free, right? It might not come right away, but it's a free thing offered nationally. So I think, did that answer the question you were asking, or?
Yes, it did. No, that was a great answer to the question. That was super interesting. And there's a lot of little things like you were saying that you could do to help with the security of a property. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, James. This has been super great. We covered a lot from your journey, a lot of interesting advice as well. You gave a lot of great stories throughout the entire thing, which was amazing. And how you're thinking about growing and building the business is super great as well. So before we close out, James, where should people connect with you? Say they want to look into the contractor program you have going on, or just want to chat about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you reach out to me at bosssecurity.screens.com. So there are a lot of S's there, BOSS security screens, plural.com, and just ping me there. I mean, if I don't, answer the phone or whatever, someone will get the message to me. And again, yeah, it's my duty to help, right? I won't be able to dedicate all my time to all whatever issues, but I do feel it's my duty to help where I can.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll link the website below, so easily
Okay.
findable. But thanks again for coming on. And
Yeah.
for everyone listening, thanks for tuning into the Intelligent Builder. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to share it with another builder or founder in your circle, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks,
Thanks so much.
James.
See you.